Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you.
Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 20. We are back on track with our immortal friend Simon Pure with a deep dive into Redcoat number 4. I am joined as usual by my special friend Nick and our Canadian loyalist guest co-host Mike Schwartz. How is everyone doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm excited to be back with another Redcoat.
We're excited to have you back. It's been a couple of weeks or maybe even a whole month since the last time that you were on here for Redcoat number 3, right?
Yeah, I think so. It feels like just yesterday, but it also feels like it's been a while. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
It does.
It does.
I'm sure it's how Redcoat feels. You know, every year feels like a day.
I feel like every time we do an episode and I say episode 20, I'm like, weren't we just doing episode like 12?
That's what happens when you do it every single week.
Yeah, it's impressive. And are you getting new listeners every week?
Yeah, we are just a hair under 2,000 downloads right now. And what's kind of neat to see as we meet new folks on the Instagram or on the Facebook that come in and say, hey, I listen to the podcast. But what's neat to see is that the numbers grow still from like the early episodes. So you can see people start to listen from the beginning to catch up. And you can see this like cascade of it. But there's always about 70 people that listen in the first 48 hours or so. And there's about 20 that somehow listen. We always release at 4 a.m. They must have it set to the who's he what's it that makes it automatically download when there's a new thing. Because there's about 20 that just happen. So shout out to all of those wonderful folks who've been listening and the new folks who are getting caught up. Who knows how quickly they're doing it? Maybe they'll hear this episode in a couple of weeks.
Hopefully no one's confused jumping in on this episode being like, who is this Canadian that's talking about Redcoat?
That's true. We should explain a couple of things. This episode is going to air on Wednesday, August 14th. That also is the release date for Geiger number 5. And the way that our format works is we always talk about a book that came out a week before, or in this case, this episode a little bit longer. But that means that next week, we're going to be talking about Geiger number 5. So you guys will have a week to go out, buy it, read it, and meet back up with us. We do want to explain also, yes, who our wonderful co-host is. And we want to get caught up with you, sir, as that is part of the Michael Schwartz format. So I just made that up.
Instead of where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, where in the world is Michael Schwartz.
Yes. Well, I'm back in Toronto. For anyone new listening, I have a comic called Armored, and I have been traveling all over the United States and Southern Ontario. I don't go anywhere else in Canada but Southern Ontario, doing a signing for my comic. Yeah, I just got back from Los Angeles a few days ago. I was in San Diego Comic-Con. I was at Golden Apple in LA. Yeah, it's been great, and I'm doing signings again here in the Toronto area.
Very, very cool. Very exciting. So if we were to understand correctly, you have your own comic. It's called Armored. There was a Kickstarter, which we participated in a while back. But also, what issue is the series at now?
So issue 2 came out at the end of June, and we have a little bit of a break over the summer. Issue 3 comes out in September for people that just want the direct edition.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, I've read issue 1 and issue 2. Highly recommend. For anyone of all ages, it is a good joint if you're like me, you know, around 40-ish maybe, or right on it, and you have a kid. It's a great book to share with your kid. It's a great comic book, I think, that you can share with a child, and it's got really neat watercolor art.
I'm getting a lot more, like, I don't want to call them kids, because in case people think like a 6-year-old, like, you know, tweens wanting to buy the comic, which is really cool. I get adults and I get tweens. And teens. It's like I consider it like a Stranger Things. If you know, some kids watch Stranger Things, a lot of adults watch it. Yeah,
that's a good parallel. I dig it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you were actually promoting and signing the book at San Diego. You weren't just a fan?
Yeah. That I was invited by the publisher to go to San Diego. But I have to admit, signing was really cool and everything, but I was mostly excited to be there because I got to go to the Ghost Machine booth and actually see a Ghost Machine booth. That was probably the highlight of the trip. I got to get the ash can, the Hyde Street ash can. I got it signed by Jeff Johns. It was a good time. Yeah.
Who else was at the Ghost Machine booth?
No one, surprisingly enough. I met Brian Cunningham, who is the editor, I believe, editor-in-chief. And he used to work for Wizard Magazine.
I remember that.
And I kind of know of Brian through the podcast I do called Wizards, the podcast guide to comics. And so I got to meet him for the first time and hung out with Jeff. That was it, though. Lamont. I think I saw Lamont McGee. I think I saw him, and then he disappeared. He's writing Hyde Street, right? He's writing some?
Yeah, I think he's writing some other upcoming titles that are in that universe. Yeah, he's a known television writer.
Yeah, he did Black Lightning, I think.
That's the one that I heard about as well.
It was very cool. Definitely get out to a convention where Ghost Machine has a booth. They have a lot of cool exclusives.
Did you get to see the Junkyard Joe action figure?
I did. I took a photo of it. Although everyone was posting it online, so I was like, I don't think I need to post this. It was pretty cool, and it was just spinning in circles, I think. Yeah, but they also had it at another booth, a Mezco booth, maybe? Are they the producers of it?
They are, yep.
It looks great. It looks really, really good.
Well, we do have a shout out. This time we wanted to shout out a creator, just because he is absolutely so supportive of the show and our content. And that is Mr. Ivan Rice. And you know what? I'm saying that I appreciate him so much. I've said his last name that way on many videos on Instagram, and he's supported them and he's never corrected me. But I've heard it's pronounced Rice or Reyes or Reese. Do you know what it is, Michael?
Did you call him Ivan?
You said Rice?
The only reason I call him Ivan and not Ivan, although I've heard Jeff call him Ivan, is because on the show, Brad called him Ivan.
Oh, see, I called him Ivan Reyes, is what I used to call him. So what were you going to say?
I was going to say Ivan Reese. You said Rice, and I was like, R-E-I-S, that's got to be Reese. But I guess I Snoggle, and E-I-S is, okay, so Rice. I guess that makes sense, actually.
You know what we're going to do?
Just have him on the podcast. That'll clear it all up.
Michael knows
He's after Gary Frank.
That's right. Did you hear the news that our next creator interview is going to be with Gary?
That's huge.
Yeah, we're excited to have him on.
Almost as big as having me on,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so close.
I mean, he's pretty talented, but he is no Michael Schwartz. We're just going to have to send him some signed posters of No Malone.
No Malone, there you go. Yeah. We'll
That's an Easter egg for the real fans. So the reason we brought Ivan or Ivan up, I guess we'll have to find out. I'll reach out and I'll find out the answer. Because really, Brad said Ivan. Jeff, I have heard say in many videos, Ivan. We brought him up because he is so diligent about supporting every single thing that we ever do. Like every single page of every post, he reposts it. He likes everything that we do. And it's just so fantastic to see the degree that he is showing the fans his process on some of these Hyde Street characters. He recently had this, I don't think that it was named, but it was this super demon looking. It looked like the evil demon guy from the movie Legend that Tim Curry was the boy, but way cooler. Like cooler than that. And that's one of the most metal cool things ever. It was just awesome. And the way that he involves himself with the fans and communicates and the causes he supports. He's a super high caliber dude. And we're just stoked that he's a part of Ghost Machine. And I can't wait for the Hyde Street series coming out that he's going to be leading essentially as an artist.
Awesome.
But thanks, Ivan. We'll find out. So we do have a piece of Redcoat news this time. And this is a special one. The other day when I was chatting with Brian Hitch, I brought up the fact that we are putting together an idea for a video that we're going to do, another bit video like we've done before. And it's going to have to do with one of the objects in Benedict Arnold's room. Now, that's all I'll say about that. But he brought something really neat up, and I asked if it was okay if I shared this on the podcast. And he brought up that there is a top hat in a glass case in that room. Do you all remember that?
We do now.
I actually do. Yeah.
All right. So that's not the item related to my video. That's what he brought up. By the way, super spoilers. If you don't want to know this thing, then pause this podcast and skip 2 or 3 minutes. But it's something that is wrong in the comic that will be corrected in the collected edition. So if you don't want to know what that is until the collected edition comes out, skip 2 minutes. So the top hat in that glass case, it was black in the comic. It's going to be a different color in the collected edition. And it's going to be red, white, and blue striped. I won't say who he said it belongs to, because he did mention that. But I will say that he said that there is a story behind everything in that room. And none of it is there by accident. If you recall, when we were describing that room, all the three of us, at first we were rather lackadaisical about all the different things in it, and then we started to notice these nuggets of different things there. So red, white, and blue top hat. I wonder who that would belong to and why it would be there. If you have any fan theories, Ghost Machine fans, send us an email at ghostmachinefans@gmail.com. But yeah, it'll be in the collected version. It'll be different. So I guess you kind of have a special version by having the comic, right? Or whatever.
So now that I know he's in that entire page, everything in there is essentially an Easter egg that will matter later on. I'm like, oh, that's super cool.
We need a map with strings and stuff connecting. Who's going to start that? One of our walls has to be that.
Oh, you want to be the crazy theory? You want to be the Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny?
Exactly.
And yeah, there you go. So, Snoggle, what do we have to do before we talk about the comic?
Oh, wait. What was my sound I've been doing? Should I share it?
I forgot. I really need to do something but instead she wants to go ahead and...
You do the spoiler pause this time. I've been doing it the past couple.
Michael, do you know what the spoiler pause is?
I know what the spoiler pause is, but I don't know I thought there was a noise I had to do.
There wasn't. We've besieged the listeners to tell us what they would like the spoiler pause noise to be. Until they do that, then we have to endure Snoggle's air horn. But we still need to tell the listeners what the spoiler pause is for.
In case they haven't read it.
And if you haven't read it, you should go out to your store right now, pause the podcast, strap on your rollerblades, and get on down and add it to your pull list while you're there. You're crazy to not have it on there already. So we'll wait for you here when you get back after you've thoroughly read that book. Even twice we'll wait. We'll be ready for you. And we can talk all about it.
You mean you should actually probably fix that. They need to jump on their horse and carriage and go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, Ghost Machines breaking down barriers, whatever. We can.
I just mean because it's Redcoat and it's a period piece.
I thought you meant even the Amish should buy this comic. Because I said rollerblades, you took it to another level. I thought that's what you meant.
I went back in time.
So now that you have picked up Redcoat number 4 and you have read Redcoat number 4, you can take a look at both of the awesome covers for Redcoat number 4. Snoggle, tell us about these covers.
We have the A1.
The one with all the skulls in the background where Einstein looks like he's falling under a pile of skulls.
Yeah, and Simon looks like he doesn't really seem too concerned.
He's just unimpressed.
But the B cover, it's got Simon in the middle looking pretty smug, surrounded by women who seem to hate him.
Is that a Gary Frank cover?
It is. It is a really cool Gary Frank cover. And that also, the C cover is the foil version of that, the one for 50. I bet that's a really neat foil cover, because of that white background.
Yeah.
Isn't this lady in the 80-page giant?
Yes, so let's take just a quick second. That there are 4 ladies on that cover that you have there, and I believe 2 of them are from the Las Vegas world, the post-apocalyptic Las Vegas world. There's one of them that looks like she might be, or are there 3 women or 4 women? Oh, there's one walking away, and she's flipping him double birds, right? So she's done with him. And then that looks like Bonnie Borden. Yeah, that's Bonnie Borden from the Las Vegas thing.
This is the lady from the tavern.
The lady from the tavern. Okay. And that's
And then we got Suzanne Summers from Three's Company.
It's a really, I mean, it's got that Gary Frank detail. Every one of these characters has a different grimace. The message is somewhat clear. Like they're trying to emphasize the womanizer piece. And apparently that he makes a lot of folks a little bit frustrated, which he does mention that even in this comic. The significance of the A cover, real quick before we move on, there is one thing that is a bit different, is that he does look a bit tired, and he doesn't typically have like that type of beard. And so I think it's meant to be indicating that 3-day cycle is wearing on it. I'm just throwing it out there. I think that is part of that. We've also seen like previews later of him looking like as this whatever it is continues to go on. He looks like he's aging, like maybe losing his immortality as the axe pulls his energy away or whatever. I guess we'll have to find out. Since we're talking about the 2 different covers and we talked about Gary, Michael, who are the creators on this book?
Well, the creators on this book are Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch. So writing by Jeff Johns, I presume still, unless he's taken up, penciling and inking. And Brian Hitch is on art. Although it looks like Andrew Curry has done some inking this issue as well. Mm-hmm. Brad Anderson on colors, Rob Lee on lettering. Steve Blackwell is the designer. Brian Cunningham is the editor-in-chief.
Steve Blackwell, he's a good dude. He knows about the tunes. He's got a band on his Instagram, and he commented on our musical choice for one of our posts the other day. Appreciate that, Steve. And Andrew Curry is going to be the dedicated inker going forward. So we should see Andrew Curry a lot more. If you recall, he was one of the most recent folks that signed one of those exclusive Ghost Machine contracts because he's going to be doing Redcoat for a while. I want to put one thing out there. I've been thinking about this a lot. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, both of you guys. Simon has become a character that I like a lot. And initially, I think I shared this viewpoint with a couple of different folks. I think Jason, who was on the show from MegaCon, mentioned this before, that you hear that someone is immortal and they squander that opportunity, and then that's a turnoff. Or it's like what the heck? Why would somebody do that? Or why wouldn't somebody get their stuff together in so much time or whatever? Because you think Wolverine's immortal, or you think the Eternal Warrior, or you think like cool characters. Like everybody who's immortal always like has huge resources. They make something of it or whatever. And so that's what makes those characters like cool. But when I really thought about it, especially after I've gotten to know him more and the way that Brian Hitch talks about him, like this emotional journey, a lot of people would squander the opportunity if you never had any consequences, and we've joked about it essentially takes him longer to learn certain things because he approaches life with a lack of sincerity, but eventually he learns it because he just he shoots he even says eventually you shoot enough people, like you learn to shoot pretty well, but it took him forever because he's not even trying. But I mean, heck, in my life I didn't always do the best thing with every great opportunity that was offered to me. And it took probably having a kid and stuff like that to really kind of make me conscious of a lot of things. So it makes me think like this is really neat because we don't know that the Simon that we've seen in 2050 in the little cameos in that time period isn't a different person. Like maybe he's not that guy anymore. And that's what we're leading to. And that'll be cool. Either way, the character, I've fallen in love with the character's journey more than the character, and I think that's the point. But how does this rank for you guys with the other Ghost Machine books right now?
It is actually my favorite. I look forward to knowing what's going to happen. I actually have a different perspective on if you're immortal. After a while, it feels like being immortal would become kind of boring. Mm-hmm. And life wouldn't have as much meaning. So maybe that's why he's a little lackadaisical. Like how in what we're reading right now, how old is he? How long has he been alive?
I believe he's 116.
116 years? I mean, that would be awful. Do you know what I mean? I know I've seen tons of people like 90 or above who are happy to be alive, but you don't see them pushing for the next 100. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he probably doesn't take life as seriously because it can't be taken, like in his mind, it can't be taken away from him.
Yeah. You know, I agree with you. He is my favorite. I like the journey as well. I'm curious about the journey. There's this interesting similarities between all the characters, Geiger, Redcoat, and Rook, in that they're all kind of loners, right? They all, what is Jeff tapping into here? With all of these, they're all loners. They're all doing their own thing. It's fascinating. They all kind of have partners now too, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's interesting. They're all on this similar trajectory. Although two are in the same universe, one is not. Yeah, but this one, he stands out to me the most because I think I just like the fun aspect of him. Rook is very serious. Very serious. He wants to, get the pig mask back, and Geiger's
Rook is such a crybaby.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I don't disagree. And then you have Geiger, who's just like, he's just, I feel so depressed for him. His family's dead, and now his dog, we don't know what's happening with the dog, do we?
Marty.
But I think I've been in since the beginning on Redcoat. I do hope we, in the next arc, I can see we're leading to the end of this arc, that we do start to see a little bit more of him, like get to know more of what he wants besides just fumbling around life.
Well, we're going to go through the issue in order, so I'm not going to bring this up right now, but there is something that he says when they're talking in the dark later that I want to make sure we note and circle back to this, because I feel like we find out what begins in this issue. I think we find out what happened that begins him down the path of indifference. But we'll see. I'm excited about this. Let's dive right into it. We don't start with Simon, though. Who do we start with, Snoggle? Who's this fine young man?
Einstein.
Albert Einstein.
Our favorite young Albert, the sidekick that we never knew we needed. He's on a boat.
He's on a boat, and it may be going fast.
T-Pain?
Yep, T-Pain. And he's on a boat, but he's stowed away right in the luggage area. And then there's some hooligans that are going to come down and get into some of the luggage and steal some of the fancy stuff. And they get a hold of him. And it really makes a cool point, the way that Brian Hitch draws this panel of this one, when the two bad guys are talking to each other and they notice there's a stowaway. The one guy, he holds up a lock pick and he's talking about how he's going to pick the locks. And it's really neat foreshadowing in just that moment, because you're like, okay, you want us to remember he's got a lockpick. Got it. Because then after that, he gets thrown overboard, and only thing that he is able to keep a hold of is that lockpick.
Yeah.
Did you guys think that boat was a boat of significance, or just meant to look like a really big boat?
I think it's just a really big boat.
Okay.
Because I did look it up, and I think he came over in like the 20s, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, but this is when he's younger. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I see that you think it was the Titanic.
I didn't know. I just see those smokestacks, and it makes me think Titanic, but
I just don't know where Leo and what's her name would be hanging off the front there. I just don't see a spot.
Yeah, you're right. So he ends up popping his head out, and he's a resilient lad. He's just like, okay, at least I got a lockpick. Yeah. I'll just swim to shore now in New York.
It could be the Britannic or the Olympic. They were sister ships to the Titanic.
Ghost Machine fans, if you happen to know like the actual boat that Einstein came over, and if there's any truth to that tale, because there is a lot of truth to the fiction in this historical fiction, shoot us an email, let us know. But what's cool is you see that up until the point that he's met Simon, he's only been in the country for 16 days, which is neat because it jives with how he told him he learned English really quickly and stuff like that. So 16 days into his journey into the U.S., he is locked in a dungeon cell. And how does he get out?
With his handy-dandy lockpick that he's kept on him.
But where does he store the lockpick?
Is it his hair?
Yeah, because he makes a joke about it later. He's like, "It is funny how many things you can fit in my hair." Yeah, but I mean, we get thrown right into the action, right? Because we left off where he was on this slab that we meet back up with him and the National Lampoon Cult Society again. They seemed like kind of idiots, right? Like they didn't, or incompetence, pretty much.
Yeah, they just keep saying, you're going to help us burn America to the ground, which is interesting. I still don't know what their end game is here, besides burning America to the ground.
Yeah, it seems like kind of mad, incoherent power prattle.
Yeah, we also discover they're in a pyramid, a giant pyramid underground.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like in this kind of half double page spread that there's like totem poles down there. Are those totem poles or
totem poles, statues?
We got a lot of some American iconography, right? The eagle, the flag is down there. Mm-hmm. But there's also a bunch of dinosaur bones being burnt.
I know
the same thing. Like, is that a T-Rex?
Yeah, it's so wild.
And imagine Simon waking up to this, like, here it is again.
It's great.
So the dinosaur bones, it's this massive pile of dinosaur bones in the middle of this underground temple, it looks like, that looks to be a pyramid. And they're preparing like a ritual type of deal. There's also these random statues of these like kind of Buddha looking, but kind of not things sitting there that are also chained down as if something could bring them to life. I have no idea. The juxtaposition of so many different themes in here is a lot, but Brian has really made a point of how they do things for a reason. So even if this is more abstract, I guarantee he'd at least be able to say, well, that's what this is, that's what that is, and this is why it's there. I think we'll still see references back to it later. You don't put a whole bunch of T-Rex skulls in a fire like at random.
Yeah.
Well, and all these different things, it gives me very similar vibes to like Benny's creepy room.
Sure. And there's this great, this to me, this next panel, we're talking Ghost Machine fans about the panels right under where we first see the inside of that pyramid. And Simon is talking to one of them and he's like, what say you release me in exchange for a large sum of money? And we venture back up to the streets of New York and find ourselves a drink or 5, all on my tab, of course. And the one cult guy is like, how much are you talking? And so it's two really neat things to me. It obviously indicates that they're disposable henchmen to some extent. But also Simon says it with a smile. So there is a certain panache or something that he's gained from not fearing death, right? Because he's like, what are you going to do to me? Because he's obviously not super worried about the whole thing with the axe or whatever, because he's smiling and joking about this. That's kind of like a strong quality if he later gains like courage and stuff. If he can also be calm under pressure, like that's pretty cool.
And lie, because we all know he has no money.
That's a good point.
So true. Then shortly after, we meet the Grand Architect. Doesn't call himself that yet. It takes a few pages of him ranting.
Right. It's because he walks up to the podium where Simon is, and then we get this most of a page spread with 2 small panels on the bottom. And I just want to call out some aesthetics here. Mm-hmm. We're talking about this page where it's the Grand Architect and it's Redcoat and he's holding the book. He's got robes on. It has the Founding Father symbol on his chest. There's some sort of sash thing that's hanging off of it that kind of matches the totem poles. His cape is an American flag, and then he has the hood.
It's just interesting, though, because they want to burn America to the ground, but he's wearing an American flag. He clearly loves America. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see how this all ends up playing out. And we'll get to the end of the issue, and we find out who the Grandmaster is.
Do you guys think that this group of people is behind what we later see happen in Geiger? I don't know. It felt like a little bit of the Great Fire.
Very interesting.
Doesn't Geiger just eat like lots of canned beans? Or am I making that up in my brain?
In order to be a protagonist in Ghost Machine of any kind, one must eat beans. It's like, it's a truism. Brooke did it in his first issue. Simon talks about it all the time. And Geiger has at least like 8 issues with beans in them. I'm not. This is serious. Like this. I'm not making that up. It's true.
They all three created the Great Fire together.
But what you're saying, though, is that what if this thing that this grand architect guy wants to do is, in fact, what leads to the unknown war somehow in Geiger, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting theory, yeah. So they end up getting out. And how do they get out again? By Einstein.
They do. They escape after a long supervillain exposition by the grand architect, which we don't even need to dive into, but it's, he makes one small point. He's like, the sacred incision has festered for 24 hours. He's ready for the second scarification. I don't even know if half those words are real words, but Einstein is like Indiana Jones in it, up on the, what are they called? Chandelier?
Chandelier, yeah.
Chandelier.
Yeah, and it's really neat because the bad guy's like, I'm the grand architect of America's death, and then he clearly drops chandelier on all of them. And I feel as though when one day this awesome tale is a film or a show, there will be a song that gets played when Einstein comes into the scene, and I imagine that like epic song happening now as he saves them and they run away. It makes me like him so, like he has such courage. Like this, he just doesn't care. Like he has a mission, he's going to get it done. And I can see why that combination of him and Simon perhaps leads Simon to a better place, hopefully.
I really like how they colored as he's sitting up there looking down on the scene and you see the shadow and then you see what he sees and then you see how he would look. Like the lighting and all of this is like pretty.
It's neat to see the light of the candles reflecting in Einstein's eyes as he's looking past the chandelier to the group.
They break free. They lock themselves in a room, and the axe is thrown at them, but it sticks into the door, so they've escaped.
So he throws the axe at that door, and it hits the door as they're running away. In a comic book where the creator roll call has Rob Lee, what would you expect to have happened in that panel?
Sound effect?
Yeah. If you recall, when Rob was on the show, he actually made a point of saying that Brian preferred to be lighter on the sound effects. And I'm wondering, like, to me, I see that and I'm like, I would typically see like a chalk sound or something, like, or a thump. Yeah, like something. Like, I'm not saying it needs that by any means. The momentum is done by the art.
Oh, absolutely. You feel it, yeah.
Yeah, I dig it. I just think it's interesting because I'm used to Rob's stuff and doing that more. And then the candle
maybe it's
goes
because
out.
the axe of lies has no sound.
It cuts through the sound of the air. So the candle goes out, guys. They're in this room and the candle goes out. Do you think, I'm just curious, is it possible Brian was behind in some way? He's like, Jeff, do me a solid. I'm behind by 2 pages. Just throw me a bone here. Stop giving me all this detail to draw. No more rooms filled with artifacts, Jeff. Just turn off the lights for 2 pages for me.
I can say that as a person that has every Spawn comic on his pull list, that I've experienced comics that do that before.
I have it on my pull list too.
But I still buy it every month, Todd.
Of course.
In this case, I jokingly thought of that as a person that's read a lot of comics. At the same time, I thought a little bit more about it. And it's interesting how we only see Simon open himself up to another person in the dark.
Yeah. When he's not able to look at the person in the eyes, he's finally revealing himself. That's interesting.
And
smart, Nick.
Take that to the bank. But no, it's a lot of self-reflection, right? Like I like to drink. I like to eat steak and potatoes and chicken dumplings. I like the attention of women too. I read this section, Ghost Machine fans, and I was like, wow, if you took 16, 18-year-old me and you gave him immortality, that's probably not that far off. And then if I didn't have a reason to mature or change or responsibility or anything at all, I'd probably still be wearing this.
This says a lot about him in this line too. People live and die so quickly, I can't be bothered to remember their names. What was yours again, lad?
I read that at first. I was like, is he joking? And then I was like, nah, I don't think he's joking. I think it's like blasé narcissism or something that like inherently happens because he doesn't feel like anybody else is of significance.
typically people cover up their pain through, not to get like make Redcoat a little bit more serious, but the people who are the most sad inside or feel the most pain cover it up with humor and use that to make other people laugh, to make themselves feel better, and to make other people feel better. So I think part of this is, yes, he's trying to be funny, but he also consistently pushes people away because, again, he's lived for 116 years. Back then, people didn't live as long. So he's probably lost a lot of people he cared about. And he was so young after the first one. He's like, I'm not going to know any of your guys' names. I'm going to get drunk and eat food.
You can't get too close to them. They're just going to die. Now all of a sudden, within the course of 15 minutes, I've gone from saying I like how lighthearted this character is, he's not depressing, to he's far more depressing than Geiger and Rook. Well, Rook's lost an entire planet.
He just covers it up with funny.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm devastated. I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm going to be too depressed.
My bad. But I do think that is an arc we're going to be leading up to, which is when we talk about like book number 6 and book number 7. I think he has big feelings and he covers it up with jokes and silliness.
So there's one super important thing. If you recall in the beginning, I wanted to bring this back up. He does say, in 1782, I found someone. She got sick, a nasty sickness. So I realized in the early 19th century that I was standing in a river with the water rushing around my ankles, watching the fish swim by. I feel like 1782, what happened to her, that's when his path to indifference began. I also think it's really neat.
That was the smallpox epidemic?
No, really? Okay. A nasty sickness.
Sorry, that other line, though. Don't take it personally, Einstein, but you're just another fish. It's just sad. They're all going to die. They're just fish then. Oh.
Yeah. But then Einstein's like, that's the first real thing you said to me. And it's like, cool. I'm going to turn on the light and now I'm going to help save you.
But this is something literally, there's not a way to make a beat in darkness in anything but a comic. I don't think you can do that in film, because he says, don't take it personally, Einstein, but you're just another fish. And this is on a comic book page with 12 panels that are of identical size. So the next panel is in the darkness with nothing. The next panel is in the darkness with nothing. Those are 2 beats that are meant to say that affected Einstein and he's moving on because he has to fix it. So he tells him the incantation again. I do also think it's cool that they show Einstein's accent in the incantation, and then it's different when Simon says it. So Simon actually does understand the distinction of how he has to pronounce scintilla ignis inferni or whatever. And the lights come back on.
Sounded perfect.
Thanks. So they're underneath a tree, and we do quickly discover as Benedict Arnold pulls them out of the tree, right? Like he kind of breaks into it. Looks like he found them. Yeah, he broke into it. They didn't find that hole.
Mm-hmm.
And
how did he know where they were?
I think that he's a good guy. Honestly, I think he's super capable. I think it's just compared to Simon and with his thing with the girl, it originally kind of came off the wrong way, but it's interesting. He can find them. So he knew that was important. He still wanted to do that. He obviously wants the book back. So that could be his primary motivation. He does grab at the book rather quickly. However, he does mention that like his house was destroyed by the Johnny Appleseed trees, but he kind of says it like it's not a big deal. Like his focus is to help them and get things back to normal. But even though he does talk to them like they're dumb.
Benny says like specifically cherries. I hate cherries.
At that moment, did you both know what the big reveal was going to be?
I didn't, but now that I put 2 and 2 together afterwards, I feel kind of silly.
That's where it hit me. It hit me.
The author of this book, Simon, the most powerful of the founding fathers.
The grand architect is, and what the double page spread ending.
It is so beautiful.
Tell us who the big reveal is. Tell the
I picture it to be read in like a very spooky, like George Washington is still alive.
It's just massive, and he's got cultists behind him.
It's like lightning.
Right, blue energy, blue magic, lightning, all that kind of stuff we've seen the whole time. And he's still got his hatchet. Now,
still a maniac.
You mentioned how Benedict says he hates cherries. That's obviously like foreshadowing to this, him telling us this information. But now that we know how like evil and power mad George Washington seems to be, at least like in his present state, like he seemed like power mad or whatever, it kind of makes you wonder, like, maybe some of the stuff that Benny did was like good.
Yeah.
You know, it makes you wonder what his function was in that time period, because he seems so resentful, like a person that maybe like did something that they never got credit for, or like could never tell the truth about. So I don't know. I think Benedict Arnold is an interesting character in this, and I hope we see him continue to come in and out so we can really understand why he's handled immortality so differently than Simon.
So why does George Washington want to burn America to the ground if he's one of the founding fathers?
I'm so confused by that myself. I did very thoroughly read, like, you know, how they have the little character things. And it really just kind of goes over how he is a crazy, and a murderous man. But I don't think it really spells it out, unless if I'm wrong.
He's an immortal as well.
He is an immortal. I don't think in the bio, and we're talking about the cool back of the trading card looking deal that we have in so many of these Ghost Machine books. And this one's about George Washington. This is a really detailed one. They're not usually this long.
Yeah.
There's one panel in this issue, and it's right after he does the big reveal and he says it's biblical, and you get to see him head to toe. And he's holding a book, and he says, long ago, God cleansed the lands of human corruption with the great flood. Now I shall do the same with the great fire. Now, I don't know that answers our question of like, why, but it seems that whatever he feels like has to be done is something that like wipes the slate clean for whatever reason. Because there are so many variables. That means that he chose to hide himself. You know, like, what's the deal here? Why did George Washington become this thing, and how? That's why it's Redcoat.
It's just really hard for you guys to read being American. You know, it's like really.
It'd be harder if it was Abe Lincoln, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we're going to see Abe. You know, that I thought for a bit there, you know, when we were talking about the hat in the case, I was like, is it Abe's hat?
I do find it funny, under abilities for George Washington. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the very last line is, he is also an excellent dancer.
So good.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Now, there is one thing in here that does give us a little bit of clarity. It says, witnessed by Benedict Arnold, George was thought to have perished in 1869 in a ritual gone wrong. But immortals are very hard to kill, and Benedict may not have seen what he hoped. A permanent death for George Washington and everything he stood for. So that means that what they've discovered in this issue, while Benny knows the grand architect is George Washington, to some extent it must be a surprise for Benny, because Benny thought he saw Washington die.
Yeah.
I bet that's what helps us learn more about Benny's story.
It's interesting.
Issues. Yeah.
I'm excited.
Okay.
Really loved this issue. Just reveals so much to us about Simon. You know, like it really, really makes me want to learn about every one of those parts of that journey, as opposed to when I first heard about him, I was like, he's just squandering the opportunity. I'm so excited to see how he evolves and changes. Now, the last section, as you know, I think, have you done a listener mail with us yet, Mike?
I don't think so.
I don't think we have had one since the last time you were on. So it's a new segment. We've got a lot of mail. We've got a backlog. We're going through it. Still need some more emails about that spoiler pause sound. We really got to revise that one. But we got emailed. We got emailed from Joey D. And would you like to read the email that we got from Joey D, Snoggle?
Okay. Joey D emailed us and said, I'm really enjoying your show. I found it because I'm new to comics, and Ghost Machine got me into it. However, I don't understand which characters are part of the same universes and which ones aren't. This is even more confusing with new titles coming out later this year. I want to make sure I'm prepared. Please help.
This is a great one. I can imagine it's confusing. To me, the best way to figure it out is if you pick up Geiger or Redcoat, there's a timeline. Anything in that timeline is part of the same universe. Any comics like Hyde Street that are not on that timeline, that's their own universe. Rook is not on the timeline, it's its own universe. That's the way I've been doing it. Do you have a better way of coordinating?
That's 100% how I've been doing it. And I may, for Joey, just FYI, I'm like a newer comic book reader, at least frequent. I've read comic books for the longest time, but this is like dedication reading. And the timeline that they have that has like Geiger, Unknown Wars, First Ghost, that's what I've been referencing to what is part of what universe. So right now it's like the comic books we have ongoing, Geiger and Redcoat are in the same universe and Rook is not.
That's exactly right.
Same.
Well done. It's such a cool question, Joey D, and it is really cool that we get to talk to you as you're entering this hobby that we have. Well, Mike and I have been stuck in for decades. Snoggle is relatively. Snoggle's been reading comics, but to this extent, like she said, pretty new. So thank you so much for saying you're enjoying the show and emailing us. I think the breakdown you just got is pretty darn good. The reason I think it's confusing is because there's Image Comics, right? And then there's Ghost Machine. And if you're thinking like Marvel DC thing or whatever, or even Valiant, you think Image is the publisher, so the universe must be Ghost Machine. This question is actually one of the more common questions on the Facebook group. And so we try to explain it by pointing people to the unnamed timeline.
On the cover, it says the unnamed, actually.
I didn't think of that. Good point.
And I think moving forward as well, Hyde Street will always say Hyde Street and then a subtitle. So like Hyde Street Devour is part of the Hyde Street universe. So I think we have to look for that. Those logos, the unnamed logo, Hyde Street logo. Maybe eventually we'll have like a Rook logo or something.
Yeah, maybe like an Exodus or something.
Yeah.
I imagine they're going to get off of Exodus too, though, eventually, because they talk about it as the sci-fi book, is what Jeff has referred to it as. Yeah. Now, one thing I will say is that it's common for a lot of people to ask this question because they're worried about missing something, or they think it's necessary that like everything connect. And part of what is cool about Ghost Machine is that you have a bunch of creators that have come together with the intent on having a platform with which to provide us with original content in a way that they otherwise wouldn't have that degree of freedom, but they're uniting under the same moniker. It's not the same as like Wolverine hangs out with Captain America sometimes necessarily. But in the world of the unnamed, what some of us really love about that, and why you're going to hear about connected universe stuff, is there are several books and many characters that are overlapping within that universe. But read all of them, because variety is the spice of life, and you need to read them all. Otherwise, you're not going to get the full experience. Well, that was a fantastic listener mail. Thank you, Joey D. Michael, it was wonderful to see you again. Joey D. Yeah, I feel like we got an email from somebody on Jersey Shore. Yeah, sorry, Joey. He's probably in Kansas. Like, screw you guys. I'll never listen again. No.
Is that what people from Kansas sound like?
I thought it was Australian accent you were doing there.
I didn't even do an accent. I just went to yeah.
I'm Joey D from Australia.
Oh man, he's never coming back. I'm sorry, Joey. Michael, it was fantastic to see you as always. Do you have anything else to add to the end of the episode?
Nothing other than I'm never going to look at black panels with dialogue the same way after talking to both of you. So thank you. I just came off of my artist saying never get me drawing a battle with, I don't want to spoil too much of my own book, but dozens of rock creatures fighting a warrior. So I that was in my head where I was like, oh, I should give him
just give him some space.
You know, it's
give him some space, give him an easier time. Yeah.
from a new comic book reader perspective, I didn't even think about it that way because one, I'm not a creator like you are, and I'm not a frequent reader like Nick has been for years. So I just thought they were trying to be like funny, but I think it could be a little bit of both.
Look at that. 3 different perspectives. I love it. Mm-hmm. Comics. Thank you so much for having me. You know I love talking about Redcoat, so I really appreciate it.
Hey, we love having you on despite the fact that you are a loyalist. We gotta keep it consistent, keep everybody accountable, and we really love hearing about your travails around the country on the autograph circuit and the success of your comic, which we are happy to support. On that note, if you want to check out all of our other content, you can go to www.ghostmachinefans.com, where there's a wiki that we would love your contributions on, a forum that some folks do still reside on, and our Instagram, where we post almost every single day with new content for you to check out. There's lots of news and cool videos on there. And we also do have a Twitter/X account, thanks to our friend Cameron in the UK. Thanks for joining us tonight on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.